The Professors is brought to you by Blackborder.com, a Magic the Gathering site with the best stories and best pros in the game. You can also pre-order Magic 2011 boxes at $89.99, so go check out Blackborder.com today. Hello everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of The Professors. This week we're delving into the various draft strategies of Rise of the Eldrazi, including the archetype I've had some success with, and our second set of Magic 2011 spoilers. So let's draw. To be honest, I've never been a big fan of Magic Online. It's too much money, more complicated to operate when trading cards, and just didn't like the idea of paying for ones and zeros when I could be paying for cardboard instead. However, over the last month my opinions shifted. For why I'm now trying to convince people to play online, check out episode 121. So I started drafting online because the payout is higher than my local shops, and because it's so damn convenient. In a week, after cashing a month's paycheck for 7 drafts, I then pawned off winnings and drafted cards for another 2 drafts worth of packs and tickets. After the first 7 drafts, I had won 1-8-4 and was getting a little discouraged, yet a little intrigued. While this is 112.5% of the average drafter, I know I'd made a fair deal of playing mistakes and lost out from technical difficulties that I'd thought Moto would fix for me, but that it just considered playing mistakes. For example, I was in round 2 of an 8-4 with an amazing Grixis control deck, and I'd lost game 1, and was on the fringe of losing game 2, but I had a plan out. He was at 3 and had 5 elephants, 2 gloom hunters, one of which had a snake umbra attached, a bloodrite invoker, and a wildheart invoker with 8 lands on board. I had a mnemonic wall which had just regrown a reality spasm, a guard gomazoa, a level 3 Hada spy patrol, a Zoth shade, a level 3 Skywatcher adept, a bloodthorn vampire, a spawn token, a tapped Kazandu tuskcaller that had just come under my control via a domestication, and 8 lands including these 4 untapped lands. I was at 10, so assuming he went for an Alpha Strike, which appeared likely based on his setup last turn and belief that Spy Patrol would beat him next turn, if he did nothing, I would have to tap down his big Gloom Hunter, block the 2 smaller Gloom Hunters with my Guard Gomazoa and Skywatcher Adept. I would also have to tap 3 more creatures and sacrifice the Eldrazi spawn to do so, preferably tapping the Wildheart Invoker and 2 elephants. I would also need to block the remaining elephants with a Mnemonic Wall, Zoth Shade, and Bloodthorn Vampire, and let the remaining damage through. If this worked, I could attack with the Hada Spy Patrol whether he had blockers or not for the win. He went into his Declare Attacker step, and I went ahead, sacrificing the spawn and casting Reality Spasm for 3. At this point, I promptly got stuck in the heat of the moment and forgot how much I'd cast the Reality Spasm for, whether it was 3, 4, or 2. Moto then prompted me to select Reality Spasm's first target, so I did. It then prompted me to choose a second target, so I did. It then prompted me to choose a third target, so I did. It then prompted me to choose a fourth target, so I did. I then proceeded to click on all 8 of his creatures, not sure at all what would happen, or how much mana I'd spent on the Mnemonic Wall when I played it on my turn, being that I had had a ridiculous number of spawn. After I was done, I clicked OK. Moto then told me to pay 5 extra mana, so I kinda clicked, well, the cancel button. The spell then proceeded to fizzle. I lost that game. The archetypes for this draft format appear narrow. You see the blue-white leveler decks, the Jund ramp decks, the red-green beatdown decks, and the blue-red tempo/control decks, and you begin to believe that's all the format allows. Note, only one of those decks has white in it. However, after a few drafts where I got to the finals, I found the immensity of archetypes you could win with in draft. Every 3-color combination is playable with the right amount of fixing, and monocolor isn't impossible either, especially when no one is taking the white cards and you table 4 Souls Attendants and 3 Invokers. I've done it before. Which brings me to another point. Fast-paced aggro is playable in this format because no one else is playing it. I've only personally drafted it once, but when you're in a pod with 7 other players determined not to draft white, not that rare, then you can get all the cards for the deck. I had a deck one time with 3 Puncturing Lights, 2 Ousts, 4 Souls Attendants, 3 Dawn-Glow Invokers, and enough Totem Armors to get me to second place, effectively losing to Consume the Meek in games 2 and 3 of the end of the draft. Souls Attendant is a lot better in Rise of the Eldrazi draft than Soul Warden in M10 draft because the length of the games and number of small creatures that come into play through the course of them. For example, in round 2 I had 3 Souls Attendants and my opponent cast the Skittering Invasion. I mean, sure, he got an Ulamog's Crusher the turn after, but with a staggering 62 life, my McKinley Griffin with a Hyena Umbra was able to race it. However, after drafting the format 2 or 3 times, you come to realize that blue and black, as it was in Zendikar World Wake Draft, are the 2 best colors. They both have the best control, best or most easily accessible creatures with evasion, and best card advantage. The 3 most important factors in this draft. Therefore, I found that blue-black or Grixis color control are the best archetypes. However, when you can't get the specific combination, the green X deck is the next best thing. So, for the past few weeks, most of my drafts have been dedicated to drafting green X. My notable draft at the local shop last week, where I 3-0'd my pod, was green-red ramp aggro. It won not by playing the best cards, not by playing a pile of good cards, but by putting together a good green-red constructed style ramp deck. I had 3 Wildheart Invokers, Kozilek's Predators, Emrakul's Hatchers, Growth Spasms, and a Nest Invader to accelerate to 2 Artisans of Kozilek. All in all, if you draft it well, you end up with enough muscle in the deck and enough ways to get to 8 or 9 mana to be ahead of the rest of the game. Our first 2 spoilers this week highlight what appears to be a vital fact about upcoming sets and their limited formats. Ajani's Pridemate and Ajani's Mantra by themselves strike me as a white bear and a random enchantment, but if you put them together in certain draft archetypes, you get a creature that's a 3/3 on turn 4, but a 10/10 on turn 11, with you up 9 life. It might sound unlikely, or not good enough as a non-combo, but with 3 more cards in the spoiler all ready to assist you with life gain, the Pridemate and Mantra get a chance to be playable on their lonesome as well. Returning white cards are Elite Vanguard, Safe Passage, Condemn, and Serra Angel. I'm a little ticked to see Wizards rubbing in the fact that Baneslayer obsoletes Serra Angel and is in the same set as the Vigilante. Again. Safe Passage, however, might have meant a new Fog deck coming to Standard if not for the fact that Howling Mine is confirmed to not be coming back. Elite Vanguard could make it to the Boros Bushwhacker deck, that is, if it's still existent after Ranger Vios rotates. For Blue's sake, I'm stoked to see Scry returning as a mechanic which appears to be replacing Flash. Augury Owl is like a Sage Owl, but better. On one hand, Sage Owl let you rearrange the top 4 cards of your library, where Augury Owl only let you see the top 3. On the other hand, Augury Owl lets you put as many of these cards as you want on the bottom of your library and might even cross over to being constructed playable. If you hit a land pocket or your land screwed, there's a good chance Augury Owl can fix that. However, while it is 133% less likely that this will happen with Sage Owl, if all 4 of these cards are lands and you need a spell, or they're all spells and you need a land, you are screwed. 2 more cards, one a reprint and one a functional reprint, show off the Scry mechanic as well though. 4C, which allows you to scry for 4 and then draw 2 cards, is incredibly skill intensive and playable in limited as a sorcery. Question is though, will it compete with other draw spells as the functional reprint of Serum Visions, Preordain? My answer is no. 4C is at the same cost as Jace the Mind Sculptor, which is kinda what you want to draw out and cast in the first place. However, what about Type 2 playable instant speed card draw? Well, it hasn't shown its face in a while, really since the time of Time Spiral's Think Twice, but Jace's Ingenuity is the new Ancestral Recall that could. The fact that it's instant speed and allows you to draw 3 cards for 5 makes it better than Mysteries of the Deep, and allows you to counter the aggro deck's creature if they've got it, or wait out casting the spell. Mindspring for 5, on the other hand, only lets you draw those 3 cards at sorcery speed. This draw spell will push blue-white to not just being the best deck, but even one that dominates the field. Because, who knows, maybe Jace 2.0 can be replaced, with the right counters. I think it's possible. So, to combat this blue-white control deck overhaul, what kind of sideboard options do we have? Well, I believe one is coming to M11, and it's a 6-mana Blue Serpent. Now, there have been 7 6-mana Blue Serpents in the game, and they all have been utterly unplayable in Constructed, and usually limited too. Deep Sea Serpent, Sea Monster, and Sea Serpent are all useless unless you're playing against the deck with islands in it. And even then, they're just Vizardrixes for 1 less mana. Ranum Serpent, Shoal Serpent, and Steelclad Serpent suffer similar flaws that make them fatally unplayable with their respective power to toughness ratios. However, what about a Serpent with Evasion, and still has a decent power to toughness ratio at 6? Well, Harbor Serpent fits that criteria, and might just make it to the blue-white control sideboards as a 5/5 unblockable for 6. Seems good enough to get there, even to raise Sphinx of Jor-El. Our last blue card is no Ovenize, but it might just be good enough to beat up on aggro creatures. See, against Baneslayer you need a flyer of your own to defend against it, as it still retains all of its abilities, in which case this Diminish might as well be a Condemn or Path to Exile, especially in the blue-white control deck. But against an Eldrazi or a creature with Mythic Conscription's new Gigantiform tech attached, Diminish assists you with the win, quite a bit. Skipping over all the new vanilla black cards, we see some crazy damage dealers in red. Arcrunner is here as the new common Ball Lightning, with a reasonable casting cost and ready to deal nearly as much damage. However, why sacrifice this creature at the end of the turn afterwards when you can fling it at your opponent with this 2-mana instant? We also see a variation of Kiln Fiend in Chandra's Spitfire. Sure, it's 1 more mana for only 1 more toughness and only gets the +3/+0 when you deal non-combat damage as opposed to just casting an instant or sorcery, but hey, Chandra's Spitfire has flying. In my opinion, still not as good as Kiln Fiend, but it'll see play somewhere alongside Fling and Lightning Bolt. In green, we start off with a Growth Spasm-esque ramp card that I expect to replace Rampant Growth, Cultivate. It has the same effect of Growth Spasm in that it gets you 2 mana sources, but really only one has use for mana immediately. And while you probably never thought of searching up a land and putting it into your hand as ramp, it certainly is, and lets you put lands into play later on when you're just drawing spells. Garruk's Companion is replacing another card from the previous core set, but it is quite obviously better than the card it's replacing. Even Nissa's Chosen only saw play in Eldrazi Green some of the time when multiple copies of Nissa were in the list. On the other hand, 3/2s that trample for 2 are pretty scary and might just be the start of a curve alongside Leatherback Baloth in a new Monument Green deck. That's all for this week, so until next week when we take a look at the newest Magic 2011 spoilers and the last of the format's limited and standard development, this is Anthony Palmario on behalf of the Professors. We're tapped out for now, but we'll untap soon. One more thing before we go. We recently entered a contest for Olympus to win $5,000 and an Olympus camera. If you vote for us, it'll help us make really awesome new stuff for the show, as well as a main project that I'll be working on throughout the summer, whether we win the contest or not. That's going to be somewhat Magic related. So click on this box, and it'll take you to the video, and click like. If you guys help, it'll be much appreciated, and it really helps the show. Thanks.